Your code to Shoei Films.
Hey, listen!
Shalom. This is Little Son Sabal Nabaya. Thank you for joining me as we continue to uncover the mysteries in regard to one of mankind's most intriguing practices, sorcery. Last time we talked about how sorcery is the manipulation of a source, of something elementary or rudimentary in nature. Sorcery utilizes these rudiments in ways that produce unnatural results. Tonight, we're going to look at another source. We're going to look at a source that we're all quite familiar with, one that we've been familiar with since we were born and even before. A source that we encounter on a daily basis. In the King James Version Bible, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 28 speaks of Christ. It reads, "And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all." And then, in the Gospel according to John chapter 1, it reads, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men." These scriptures show that God is in all things, and all things were created by Christ. In the Gospel according to John, chapter 14, verse 6 says, "Christ saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." In the last episode, we learned how certain elements are tied to certain fallen angels. Christ is letting you know in the Gospel of John that he is tied to life itself. There are many different types of life forms on the planet Earth. There are insects, animals, fish, plants, microscopic organisms, and more. The one thing that every life has in common, every life, every organism, everything that is living, everything contains one element, and that element is carbon. The human body is 18.5% carbon. In the King James Version Bible, in the 6th verse of Jude, it says, "And the angels, which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day." In order for these angels to leave their first estate, it means that they had to abandon their original created purpose. The Book of Remembrance, which is referenced in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16, shows us the original first estate of the fallen watchers. And then it shows us what it is that they succumbed to. There is a fallen angel who is named Ramtel. His name means burning stones of God. He is the embodiment of coal. When he was first created, he had the definition of the feeling of gentle warmth of the Father's personal nearness. It protected one from loneliness, cold, insecurity, and brought well-being and comfort. Had Ramtel maintained this definition, he would have been a significant help to the Father. Ramtel would have been like the first thing the Father did, to respect man by covering the face of the deep with darkness to safeguard agency. However, instead of this holy definition, Ramtel chose the definition that you were made for the world and are just one of many and are expendable. Take note that Ramtel, coal, the original definition was the feeling of gentle warmth of the Father's personal nearness. Remember that all life has carbon within. Coal is almost entirely composed of carbon, but it has trace amounts of hydrogen, sulfur, oxygen, and nitrogen. One could say that coal is tainted carbon. Coal was tainted when he left his first estate. In the King James Version Bible, in the first epistle of John, commonly referred to as 1 John, chapter 1, verse 7 says, "But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Christ his Son cleanseth us from all sin." So here we see where blood is being used as a righteous element for good, and it is cleansing. But what happens? What happens when blood is used incorrectly? In the Book of Remembrance, in the words of Gokul Haram III, chapter 1, verse 41, it says that Semihaza instructed Lamech that he, by the use of the element of wickedness, and by using a meteorite, and by drinking menstrual blood, could conceive a child that was given by the power of the intervention of his agency, a lying vision according to the choosing of Semihaza. Semihaza is one of the many names of Satan. Notice that Satan did not instruct Lamech to use clean blood, but instead the blood of a filthy rag. And of all things, why did Satan choose a meteorite? In the King James Version Bible, in the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 10, verse 18, Christ makes a statement. It reads, "And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven." Now, let us return to the Book of Remembrance, and let us read about the fallen watcher who is Satan. Let us read about Semihaza. Semihaza, my name has seen, meteorite. Semihaza is the leader of all the fallen watchers. He is the first to fornicate with humans. He has been named Devil, Beelzebub, Satan, Lucifer, Phosphorus, Belial, and others. He is the falling star that fell to earth that Eve found. He is iridescent blues, greens, and blacks. He is the leader of all evil temptation, sin, pollutions, corruption, filthiness, and rebellion against God. Originally, God made him to be the son of the morning. He had the definition to herald the authority and legitimacy of Christ, because Christ is what his name has seen. But Semihaza was jealous and envious of the Messiah, and would not be the language of repentance. Had he chosen to keep this definition, he would have been the elder watcher of all the language of repentance. How spectacular it would have been to behold the language of repentance in a falling star that heralded our dear Messiah's authority and grandeur. But he chose instead to have a definition of the herald of legitimacy of the evil world and the desirability of the dominance of pleasure. Semihaza teaches spellbinding to humans, and the cutting of roots works like voodoo. He teaches praying against people to hurt them, to destroy, take advantage of them, and to murder them with prayer. Semihaza taught Cain the secret that he could pray and use element in an evil way, and Cain was his master because Semihaza had no one else to turn to. Doing this as he was instructed, Cain prayed and caused a falling star to fall on his brother Abel to kill him. Then Cain was in turn killed by an earthquake, which caused his stone house to fall on him. Semihaza showed Cain how to kill Abel in this way. Now he is Cain's master. He is the master of rebellion against God. He is the master sorcerer, master warrior for evil, the master of self-glory, and the using the spoils of war to gain honor and fame. He has from the first made every continuous effort to be the Son of God in order to replace the Messiah. Now Semihaza is the god of pride and the enemy of humility. The temptation of his imaginings to be worshipped by innumerable human beings was too great, and he chose for evil. Having traveled throughout creation, he was able to establish false visions for those who would follow him. So he too intervened with agency to establish the beginning of evil and sin and rebellion against God's created purpose in all things. So the source of all sorcery is Satan. It began with him, and by instructing Lamech to use menstrual blood, what he was doing was tampering with life itself. He literally was altering carbon. Now let me ask you a question. Let's look into our everyday lives. Have you ever heard of 44 Farms? This is a company that has been around since 1909. Just look at the meat. Everything looks good. If you were to go through and read about this company, you would see that they have organic products. They don't add any of the bad stuff, no extra hormones, no pesticides, none of that kind of stuff. But if you were to dig a little bit deeper, you would discover something else about 44 Farms. You would discover that they actually clone their cows. You see, there's a certain grade of meat that is very rare among Black Angus cattle. And in order to achieve this rarity every time, someone had the idea, let's just clone one of these cows, and then let's go ahead and breed it with our other cattle so we can make more and more and more top-notch meat. And that's what they did. And if you keep on reading about it, you find out that 44 Farms has a lot of their products in a lot of different stores, including Walmart. Yes, you can go to Walmart and you can buy organic beef and not know that you're actually eating cloned meat. You're eating altered carbon. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever heard of a company called CRISPR? This company right here. CRISPR is a company that plays with life. They play with carbon. Yes, this company actually does gene editing, meaning they do genetic editing to your DNA, and to your RNA. On their website, it says CRISPR/Cas9, a specific, efficient, and versatile gene editing technology we can harness to modify, delete, or correct precise regions of our DNA. Dr. Emmanuel Charpentier, one of our scientific founders, co-invented CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing. Until then, people knew CRISPR only as an acronym for the clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats of genetic information that some bacterial species use as a part of an antiviral mechanism. Now, as a gene editing tool, CRISPR-Cas9 has revolutionized biomedical research and may soon enable medical breakthroughs in a way few biological innovations have before. CRISPR-Cas9 edits genes by precisely cutting DNA and then letting natural DNA repair processes to take over. The system consists of two parts, the Cas9 enzyme and a guide RNA. Let's take a look at this video.
Today, most medical therapies aim to treat diseases by targeting abnormal proteins associated with a disease. Usually, these abnormal proteins exist because of mutations in specific genes in a patient's DNA. In the past, we have not been able to alter these genes directly to address the root cause of a disease. However, a novel gene editing system known as CRISPR-Cas9 may allow us to modify, delete, or correct specific areas of our DNA in order to treat these diseases. The system is comprised of two parts, Cas9, an enzyme that cuts DNA, and a guide RNA whose sequence directs Cas9 to a specific location in the DNA where the edit should be made. Cas9 associates with the guide RNA to form a complex that can be easily and precisely targeted to a desired site in the DNA. The CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing process begins when the complex recognizes and binds to a short segment of DNA adjacent to the target site. This initiates unwinding of the DNA helix, which allows the guide RNA to pair with a specific target sequence in the DNA. If the sequences pair precisely, Cas9 cuts the DNA, forming a double-strand break. Our cells respond to such breaks by activating natural DNA repair pathways. In some cases, a process called non-homologous end joining results in the addition or deletion of a few base pairs, which disrupts the original DNA sequence and can cause gene inactivation. A larger fragment of DNA can also be removed by using two different guide RNAs to target separate sites on either side of the desired deletion. Cleavage occurs at each site, and the repair process joins the separate ends, thereby deleting the intervening sequence. Corrections to DNA can also be made by adding a DNA template along with a Cas9 guide RNA complex. The template is designed with sequences that exactly match the DNA adjacent to the target cut site. Through a process called homology-directed repair, the cell uses the template to repair the break, thereby replacing the faulty DNA sequence or even inserting a new gene.
It is clear that these people see nothing wrong with playing God. Look at this quote. It says, if scientists can dream of a genetic manipulation, CRISPR can now make it happen. Now take a look at this. It says, with CRISPR-Cas9, we aim to target the source of genetically defined diseases and engineer the next generation of cellular therapies. Many diseases have a genetic cause, including more than 10,000 monogenic diseases caused by mutations in individual genes. CRISPR may enable us to repair the genetic defects that underlie these diseases. Do you see what's going on here? Do you see that now they are using sorcery as a way to heal? In the Book of Remembrance, in 1 Chi, chapter 12, verse 57 says, and Semihaza proclaimed he was the nursing mother of all mankind, and many sicknesses spread abroad among the wicked, and the Decadeshoi were their healers. The Decadeshoi are the fallen watchers. They want to alter the carbon. They want to taint the carbon. They want to alter life. They want to stain life. They want to make it filthy. Keep in mind that there's nothing wrong with carbon. Carbon is essential for life in the physical realm. Also, there's nothing wrong with blood. Blood courses through our veins. Blood carries oxygen to our hearts. Blood is also a good thing. But look what happens when you alter carbon. Look what happens when you alter blood. Look what happens when you alter life. This also is sorcery. Going to the source and manipulating it to produce something unnatural. Because no matter what you think, it is unnatural to manipulate DNA to make a person live 3 times longer. It is unnatural to edit the DNA so that you can create a super soldier, so that you can edit out all of the so-called imperfections. It is unnatural to create a clone. Understand that you cannot clone a soul. Look at this quote by Richard Dawkins. It says, anybody who objects to cloning on principle has to answer all the identical twins in the world who might be insulted by the thought that there is something offensive about their very existence. Clones are simply identical twins. That is how the world views such issues when you have no spiritual insight. Look at the guy who said this, Richard Dawkins. Just look at him. He was the University of Oxford's Professor of Scientific Understanding. This is who Oxford wants you to listen to. And that ought to tell you which side of the fence Oxford is on. This is Little Son Sabal Nabaya saying much love, much respect, and much shalom.
You're called to Shoei Films.